Welcome, everybody. This is EA Global Summit 2020 virtual conference connecting global EA practitioners. We have been seeing fantastic response, over 1,000 people attending this conference. We have a great lineup of speakers and workshops from the EA experts across the world. And we have sophisticated collaboration platform to give you all the best experience of attending this conference. For this session, we have Ryan and David from Sparx Services North America, who will be presenting about ServiceNow integration with Sparx and a demo around APM and knowledge management use cases. We also have the Teams channel ready and set up for you to connect and interact with Ryan and other practitioners after the session and throughout this summit. Please refer to the chat window to find the link. Please log your questions for this session in the Teams channel shared in your chat window. Ryan and David will be answering few questions in the Q&A session at the end, but you can continue a detailed discussion after the session in the Teams. Now over to you, Ryan. You can now present your session and share your screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Juhi. Thanks for the introduction. So for those of you who attended some of the earlier sessions today, this one's going to take a slightly different format. This is going to be a little less formal and a little more of a demo type layout. Before we get started, I'd like to also introduce myself. My name is Ryan Schmier. I'm the Director of Operations at Sparx Services North America. And I'm joined today by David Rice. He's one of our principal architects who's going to be helping us drive the demo and help us explore some of the things that we can do integrating Sparx Enterprise Architect with ServiceNow. So welcome, David.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, some topics we're going to be covering in the session today. We're going to start with just kind of a general overview. Why would you want to integrate EA with your ITSM platform? We're going to, as part of this, we're going to kind of take a step back to the presentation from about an hour ago, to tie it back in with some of the underlying business problem we're trying to solve there. And then we're going to jump into a couple of use cases, looking at application portfolio management and how you can use these tools together to help rationalize your IT portfolio. And also a very interesting use case around developing an operational process knowledge base built on a combination of the two tools. We'll then move into a discussion of the integration feature roadmap. So we'll discuss this a little more as we get into it, but the integration capabilities and what's available and the use cases and scenarios that are supported are evolving. And we've got a lot of new scenarios we'll be lighting up soon. So we're excited to share those with you. And then we'll close with just a brief conversation of, hey, if you want to do this yourself or if you'd like our help doing it, how do you get started? With that, let's go ahead and jump on in. A little bit about Sparx Services North America before we get going. Who are we? We are the Sparx Services organization, of course, in North America. Our primary audience and customer base is in the US, Canada, and Mexico. However, we do also do some engagements with other parts of the Americas as well as folks in other regions. We've been working with the Sparx architecture tools and platforms for over 16 years now. A lot of great experience that's given us as both practitioners as well as trainers and integrators of the platform. Our organization really specializes in system integration, customization, and helping you use Sparx to solve business problems. We also have industry thought leaders in the alignment of architecture and ITSM processes. As I mentioned on the last session, we have a practice area really centered around this idea that architects and service management need to work closer together and helping organizations drive that alignment. We are also a ServiceNow technology partner, so we've worked with ServiceNow and we are constantly working with them to help make these integrations even better, to help bridge between the Sparx organization and ServiceNow to make sure that the customers are getting the full support from both organizations that they need. Okay, so let's start off. Why should you integrate Sparx with your ITSM platform? This is stepping back to a few slides out of the last presentation, but I think they really kind of help ground the conversation. Our organizations are trying to become digital enterprises. We're going through digital transformations. We're trying to interlink our business processes with our IT systems in new ways so we can leverage emerging technology. We're trying to become more agile. And in doing that, all the pieces of business and IT need to work together seamlessly. We can't have silos within our organization. One of the key areas where we have barriers today is in the integrated data that exists between architecture and service management. So as we think of this, and the way I explained it in the last section, any foundation, whether you're building a building, it's kind of made up of bricks and mortar. There are the things, the objects, the components, and then there's the glue and the stuff that holds them together, that connective tissue and intent. And in most organizations today, those components and the connective tissue are really kind of managed and championed by two different organizations. But in order for our organizations to be truly successful, we need to bring that information together. We need to combine the connective tissue with the rich, current, up-to-date information service management brings, so we can have that holistic picture of our organization, our processes, and our systems. So actually, before I go into that, when we talk about, why would I want to integrate ServiceNow with Sparx Enterprise Architect? Both of these are world-class platforms. EA is the world's leading modeling tool for doing your architecture modeling, in use by a good majority of organizations, large and small, around the globe. ServiceNow is the world's leading ITSM platform. And both of these are very robust platforms, but neither one of them does everything. Both of them have areas of strength and areas of weakness. But when you combine these two platforms together, you start to see some capabilities that are truly outstanding. ServiceNow has some great capabilities for helping to drive sort of operations, tying in with discovery and your ticketing and your knowledge base and managing your configuration items and all the very detailed stuff within your organization. What it's not great at is enabling you to model how could that IT environment look like in the future. Sparx is a great modeling platform which helps you connect all the pieces together, create this connective tissue, but yet Sparx as an architecture platform isn't designed for handling, tens of thousands of changes, tiny little changes happening within your IT environment every day. And so if we leverage the strengths of both platforms, we can have both the robust scale and sort of the current state robustness that ServiceNow gives us, as well as the modeling capabilities of EA to help define what needs to change to get the organization to where it wants to be in the future. So it's really a better together story. So a couple of use cases, and I'm going to step through and kind of talk through these, and then I'm going to stop with the slides because y'all are seeing a lot of slides today. And we're going to step into these tools and we're going to walk you through some examples. So the first use case we're looking at is around application portfolio management or rationalization. And there's really two scenarios in here that I'll break out in a second. But at the highest level, the problem statement that we see from customers is we need to be able to rationalize our holistic IT portfolio in a way that we can see what systems need to change to meet our strategic objectives. We might do this in the context of something like capability-based planning, or this may be an IT asset management discussion as you're trying to cut IT costs. We may do this in the context of a cloud migration effort or a digital transformation. As architects, we actually do this a lot. We look at the current state of the environment and we look at where the business is going and we say, okay, what needs to change in order to get there? And in order to do that, we need the ability to have an accurate picture of what exists in the environment today. for a lot of companies that have ServiceNow, ServiceNow is the place that has the CMDB, the configuration management database. It's populated by discovery, automated discovery, which goes out and finds all the things on your network, all the user accounts, all the network devices, all the applications, all the software that's installed, and maintains that in a consistent way. And that data is refreshed as it changes. So if something new gets added to your environment, it pops up immediately. This is critical because your service desk folks need that to do support tickets and things like that. However, if we want to model change and we want to help drive change within our organization, we need to be able to map those things that were discovered in service management back to our architecture. So if you have 100 new applications that were identified through discovery, we need the ability to map those back to our business processes, to map them back to our functions, to our strategies, to associate these components that are present within our environment relate to these logical applications that we designed and we architected months or years ago. So we need to be able to pull this information together. And that's really the thing that we're trying to do here. How we use that and what we use that for, there's, like I said, there's a few different scenarios in there. So how do we address this through Sparx and ServiceNow integration? So at the simplest level, configuration items and relationships are a series of objects and relationships that exist within the ServiceNow system. And they tend to be at a very granular level, but they exist already. So we might as well use them when we're doing architecture. So what we're doing here is we're bringing the CI data and the relationships from ServiceNow into EA as ServiceNow CI objects. We can do this either using generic stereotypes or customizing them. And we're starting to use more MDGs to support certain attributes of these things. But once we bring these CIs into EA, they're then something that we can treat just like any other object, and we can map it into our processes and our applications and create additional connections and business service relationships and things like that. One of the things that we've learned is, when we do this, we don't need to bring in all of the attributes that ServiceNow has about a configuration item. What we can do is we can maintain an integration between these two systems, and we'll show you this in a minute, to allow you to go from EA and pop back into ServiceNow if you need to get more details. And this is great because a lot of the higher level metadata about a configuration item tends to be stable, while some of the more operational details tend to change very frequently. So this enables us to expose that information to the architects without having to update and replicate it all the time. The other use case that we're going to step through is around this idea of an operational knowledge base. This is something, that's, the integration works in a similar way, but the context is very different. So we've got a number of customers that we've worked with over the last couple of years who develop very complete and robust process models in EA. And they want to use those process models as work instructions for employees and contractors and vendors working in facilities around the globe. So they want people to be doing their job anchored on the process models. And that's a great thing for architects because it means our process models are useful and they're being used. But in doing that, you get to a process step and you need to explain to someone how to do it. Maybe you need to train them on it, or maybe there's a set of work instructions, a checklist that needs to be followed, or a series of templates that need to be used. There's a lot of operational details which are necessary for people to execute their day-to-day jobs, which aren't necessarily architecturally significant. ServiceNow has a knowledge base. If you think of it in terms of help desk, since ServiceNow started out as a help desk system, as the set of scripts and work instructions that a help desk might use. If you encounter this situation, do this. So they create these things called knowledge articles in their knowledge base, and those can have videos and documents and links and all sorts of stuff attached to them. It can really be anything. Those knowledge articles have workflow around them to create them and review them and approve them and re-review them later on. And that's great. ServiceNow has detailed work instructions and Sparx has processes. Well, wouldn't it be great if we could link the processes in Sparx to the detailed work instructions in ServiceNow, and then maybe use something like Prolaborate to curate out role-based views to different roles or different functions within your organization. This is actually a very common scenario and something that, like I said, we've had quite a few customers ask us for, and we're going to show you a little bit of how that works. We're not going to get into the Prolaborate piece on this demo, but if you sat through any of our other calls or sessions from today, I think you'll have a good idea of how that works. So how we address this scenario through the integration. Knowledge-based records, just like CIs, are brought into that exist in ServiceNow or brought into EA as this kind of custom object. You can then map these objects directly to your processes. So you have a process step and it's supported by knowledge-based articles or work instructions. And that way, when you view the process flow, you can see not only the high-level process flow, but you can see all the detailed work instructions that go with it, and yet manage those things in the change management of those work instructions in ServiceNow, which is the tool that many companies prefer for doing that. And in general, what we're doing here is we're leveraging Sparx for what it does best, and leveraging ServiceNow for its strengths. So we're going to switch over to a demo, and this is where I'm going to start tag teaming with David. Before I hand it over to David, though, I'm actually going to pull up ServiceNow for a minute. Many of you have never seen it. You might not know what ServiceNow even looks like. And of course, it's going to make me log in again. Give me just 1 second. So like I mentioned, ServiceNow is one of the leading IT service management platforms out there. And it does a lot of things for companies. It's a ticketing system, it's a knowledge base, it's got some discovery capabilities and things like that. It's really, a service management system is really the underpinning system for a lot of your IT service management processes. Okay, so let me share this. Let me just drag it over here. Let's take a look. Okay, so what am I looking at? I'm actually in ServiceNow right now, and I'm looking at a list of configuration items. These are things that may have been entered in as IT assets, or things that the people entered in manually. Often when you call in and open a help desk ticket, if the application you're looking for isn't listed, it might get entered in here. I also mentioned before that a lot of companies have automated discovery and collectors that run on their networks to help discover all the little bits and bobs that are out there in their IT environment. So, in each one of these, there's all sorts of rich detail about, about the object. It has names and asset tags, and it can have model numbers and serial numbers, and it can be tied to different things. It's interesting for those of you who like digging into operational data. You could spend months in here. Another thing that ServiceNow has, I mentioned before, the whole knowledge article piece. So let's look at a few of those. This is if you've ever worked on a help desk or in an IT support function, you're probably familiar with this. These are basically articles. People create an article. It's got a title. It's got keyword tagging. You can search on it, but it allows you to record a set of work instructions or steps or information about a certain topic. And ServiceNow enables you to manage the whole workflow of that knowledge article. It's interesting. We're not going to spend too much time here because this isn't necessarily a ServiceNow call. This is we're here to talk about Sparx, and we're here to talk about how we can use Sparx to help drive better integration with our architecture and ITSM processes. So let me go ahead and hand the presenter role over to David. David's going to bring up Sparx EA, and we're going to show you what some of this stuff looks like in EA once we bring it over. Okay, so as I'm handing this over to David, let me explain to you a little bit about what we did here and how this integration works. So we'll talk about this a little bit more. Through Pro Cloud Server, Sparx offers some SBPI type connections between or to ServiceNow today. Those enable generic access to certain resources. We've actually taken and extended on that model and pulled out some very specific use cases to draw out those configuration item objects and to draw out those knowledge articles out of ServiceNow. They have to go through some level of transformation, and then they're modeled in EA. In EA, as David is showing, we actually model these things as Archimate objects, as Archimate nodes, is how we did it for this transformation. But we have the ability to take these things and either transform them into types of objects that you have today, or we have the ability to create custom stereotypes, and we often do this in the ServiceNow case, to help preserve some of the attribute sets that go along with ServiceNow. So what we do is we basically bring the objects over. So in this case, I pulled over a set of configuration item objects, as well as a set of knowledge base articles. And you can see some of these listed that list those. David, if you can scroll down under configuration items, those things in that list, that's the exact same list that we were just looking at in ServiceNow. The exact same objects, and they're actually connected to those objects in ServiceNow, and we'll see that linkage in a second. So great. You brought over some objects, some data from ServiceNow. All of us have probably done some level of data import. That's interesting, but not really exciting. Where it gets exciting is, what do I do with these things? What does this data mean, and how do I use it? So let's start by looking at the first use case that we talked about, application portfolio management. So I've got all these applications in here that came from ServiceNow, and if you look in your main window, you've got a process flow. This is a very interesting process flow. It's all about ordering a pizza, which we were hungry when we did this, so it's a good process, but it's something that a lot of people can relate to. Okay, well, any sort of process, particularly when you start talking about digital transformation, isn't just about people. It isn't just about activities. It involves systems. It involves applications, and it involves technology components. We could go ahead and add in all of the different applications or systems that are used in supporting this process and just do that manually. Or, in the spirit of reuse, we could just take those objects that already exist from ServiceNow and map them into our data set, map them into our process to say, hey, this application here supports a process, and this application here does something else. We're connecting in our ServiceNow data set to our application data, our discovered application data direct from ServiceNow. Okay, why is this important? This is important because in two situations. One is architects and ITSM folks have a tendency to make copies of each other's data and duplicate them, and we end up with multiple different versions and copies of data, be it customer data, application data, you name it. And the more we duplicate things and replicate things, the more likely we are to start getting things out of sync and lose the end-to-end traceability that we really need. So instead of copying data, what we're doing is connecting data. We're integrating it to be able to connect our operational data set in with in with our business data set and our business processes, and we're able to create any relationships that might be missing. We do this, in the context of an as-is versus to-be architecture. So you may look at it and say, today this process is, the one that David just modeled there. You're trying to calm down a customer because he's mad because his pizza didn't get here. You may be using your MacBook today to support that. In the future, you may say, you know what, that needs to be a mobile application and a mobile technology so we can address that in the field as we're delivering the pizza. Wow, okay. So you can model out the to-be. That may not exist already in your inventory from ServiceNow. This may be a new application. This allows us to start with our current state and use that as the baseline for developing our target state architectures. Okay, so that's kind of the application portfolio management. And then once you map these things together, you of course can do all the normal things that you might do in EA. You might look at it, look at these processes as they relate to an organization and say what applications, and what systems map to this business function or map to this process. And you could view that in matrix view and that kind of thing. So we're going to jump over to the other scenario for a second. I mentioned that there's a lot of organizations that want to use their processes within EA to drive consistent behavior and activities by their staff in the field. So perhaps this workflow is a franchise company that, a Pizza Hut, that they want to deliver and manage the pizza delivery process consistently around the globe, regardless of what where you are, what language you're in, what country you're in. If you're going to be a part of this company, you're going to do it in a consistent way. That's great. The high level process flow is great, but what if we need detailed instructions? So you need to calm the customer down. What if that activity requires some detailed sets of instructions? Are there some guidelines about how to calm the customer down? Are there certain things you should say or not say? Is there a script you should follow? Those are the types of detailed work instructions that are very important if you want to use your process models to drive operational activities, but they're not necessarily architecturally significant and something that an architect needs to model. They're things that your management, your leads out in the field, your operation leads need to define how the folks on their team, what best practices they should use. So what we've done here is we allow the folks out in the field to model those detailed work instructions in ServiceNow, where they can go through a review process and get signed off. And maybe that's a local review and a central review by someone until it's ratified. And yep, that's a set of consistent instructions that we're going to be using. And then we bring those in to EA, and then we map them to the process step. This enables us to tie that back in to that core process. And then when you have a team out in the field, maybe at a pizza restaurant in your local town, that they can bring up the process model to show how they should be doing their jobs, how they should be executing their processes. But when they need to drill down, oh, I can see there's a set of detailed work instructions I should follow. Okay, and here's where it gets interesting. Because we didn't create these as objects from scratch in EA, because we brought these in from ServiceNow, you can click through. So David, can you click through on this one? Okay, you'll notice in the tag value in EA, we actually have the URL from ServiceNow to click through to view the actual article work instructions. And this could be text, this could be a video, this could be pictures, it could be really whatever you want. But it means that we don't have to bring all those detailed work instructions into EA. We can connect in and leverage them where they exist in ServiceNow already. I mentioned before, people, just like any other parts of your architecture, you have architects that need to model these things and create these things, and then you have other audiences that need to consume them. These may be business stakeholders, they may be pizza delivery drivers. And through a platform like Collaborate, we can take these process models out of EA and we can expose them, curate them out into role-specific views. And that link that brought us back into ServiceNow, we can turn that link into a hyperlink that people can go from their high-level curated read-only process view in EA directly into their work instructions. So what we've done is we've played connect the dots, and we've brought the low-level operational data, be it work instructions in a knowledge base, or be it configuration item application technology data from your CMDB, and we connected that into your process layer, and we allowed the architects to model it and make decisions on it. And then through Collaborate, we're able to curate that out to all the people who need to consume it, all using sort of the architectural principles of reuse, integration, connectivity, and at the end of the day, what you end up with is less time spent by architects trying to model this stuff out, and a more usable end product for the people who need to leverage this data for making decisions and driving their day-to-day business activities. So that was the demo. So I'm going to switch presenter back to me. We got 2 more slides, and then we'll open this up for questions. Okay, so walked you through a couple of the scenarios in terms of things that we're able to leverage the ServiceNow Sparx integration for. As I mentioned earlier, there is an integrator available, an SBPI integration that exists today via ProCloud Server to allow you to connect and start bringing stuff in from ServiceNow. It's great that you can connect 2 tools, but one of the things that we've learned and where our focus is as a Sparx Services organization isn't so much about connecting tools, it's about lighting up scenarios and helping people solve problems. So what's going on right now is we're going through a process of building out these integration scenarios, talking not about what you can do with these 2 tools together or how you can connect them together, but what you can use these 2 platforms together to in terms of solving problems within your business. So, and this is something we're going to see more of these things get built out over the next year. So just wanted to share this with you in terms of some of the other scenarios we're in the process of building out. So, what we showed you today was the CMDB data import. We have the ability to bring your configuration data, both the objects and relationships, in from ServiceNow into EA so we can model. We also showed you knowledge mapping to processes, so number 8 down here. Additional things we're working on are the ability to pull in the ServiceNow schema. We've got a lot of people who say, hey, ServiceNow is a platform and I need to integrate with it and I need to understand how we're using it. And wouldn't it be great if I could bring the ServiceNow data model into Sparx so I could use that for designing integrations? We're working on that. Heat mapping based on ServiceNow attributes. ServiceNow, because it's using discovered data and because there's operational data in there about things like system availability, SLA, things that are changing. We're in the process of implementing heat map capabilities. So you can not only see what's coming from ServiceNow, but you can see things that have changed. So for example, it might be which systems have or which configuration items have appeared in your environment within the last 30 days, or which things that are which configuration items are no longer showing up by automated discovery. So perhaps they're not there anymore. So we can start bringing some of that in. That's some of the heat mapping capability that's coming out soon. ServiceNow also has some service mapping capabilities as they define business services and map technology to those. We actually had the ServiceNow team come to us and say, we would really like the ability to create and master our service mappings in something like Sparx and have those flow into ServiceNow so we can create those relationships in a true modeling tool and have our service management tool consume those. So we're in the process of doing that. We talked a little bit about knowledge records. We talked about configuration items today. Problem records are another key data set in ServiceNow. Problem records are bugs and issues and known issues. In an architectural sense, those problem records coming from your operations system are requirements. They're unmet needs of the organization. They may be bugs or feature requests in the system, things that aren't working quite well. They may have workarounds around them, but those are things that we want to be able to bring into Spark so you can model them as requirements for a new version of a platform or a new version of an application. And then as we get into a few months from now, the next thing we're going to be working on is pushing architecture data out to ServiceNow users. We've had a lot of requests from people saying, it's great that you're trying to allow the architects to see the operations data, but when I've got an incident manager or a change manager who's sitting there trying to determine whether to approve this change request or troubleshoot why a system went down, it would be really great if they could see the blueprints. It would be really great if they could see how the architects designed the system in the first place, because often your operations guys don't have that information at their fingertips. They end up having to figure it out for themselves. So we're working on how do we make EA content available to ServiceNow users through Prolaborate, and then how do we integrate through SSO so we don't have any challenges jumping back and forth between systems. So these are some of the key features that are coming out over the next few months that we wanted to share with you guys. There's some level of integration available today. You're going to see a lot more of it coming soon. So before we jump into questions, a couple of reference points to start with. If you've seen something here that piques your interest, maybe it's just the general concept about, hey, these are two platforms that I'd like to see how we might leverage them differently. Or maybe you're ready to move forward with trying out an integration, or maybe you have a custom need. Spark Services North America, we're here to help you with that. So what I'd encourage you to do is reach out to us. The email's right here. We'd be happy to set up a time to talk with you about what it is you're trying to do, or even brainstorm what you might consider doing in the future that you don't even have a project around yet. Set up some time, let's talk with you, let's explore what's possible as we take the Sparx platform and we start integrating it with ServiceNow, with other external platforms to really enable us to model the full enterprise. So with that, I will open it up for some questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for the great session. So if there is any questions coming up, I'll keep the questions posted in the Teams window. So please have an eye on that. Yeah. So let's wind down the session here, if you're okay.
Sure, that sounds good. So again, continue the conversation. If you've got questions, post them in the Teams chat and we'll be happy to respond to those. If you've got other scenarios, I wonder if we could do this or that, let's talk about them. Let's have that discussion as a group.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thank you so much. So thanks, Ryan and David, for the session once again. Thank you all for attending this session. The video of this session will be made available after this conference, and we will be notifying you all once it's available. So yeah, everyone, please join Teams and continue the conversation with Ryan and David and other EA experts too. So thanks everyone. Thanks for participating.